Hello, everyone. Welcome to this video with Nick and Eleanor. Nick is a former FBU intern, then he joined Facebook as a software engineering intern, and now he's a full-time data scientist over there. So thank you, Nick, for joining us.
Thank you for
And
having
thank
me.
you, Eleanor. Eleanor is a university recruiter at Facebook. So she'll be answering some questions that you may have later on in the comments. So let me just explain how this will go. In the first half an hour, I'll ask Nick a few questions about his experience, his preparation tips, and all the general questions that everybody has. And then in the next half an hour, Eleanor can take questions from you in the comments. So I'm excited.
Awesome.
So Nick, the first question for you is, you started off as FBU. That's kind of like the first role you did at Facebook. So how did you develop into the data scientist that you are today? Like, did you have any clue in the beginning that you would end up as a data scientist at Facebook?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So the short answer is no. I had no idea that I was going to be here. I originally was studying like politics. I wanted to be like maybe a politician, and then I moved into like math. But I didn't know what you could do with something like a math or a statistics major. I thought I was going to be an actuary and work for like an insurance company. That's like the only thing that I had realized. And then there was something similar to this, but at my school, and it was to talk about FBU. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll just try this thing out. And I went to it, I applied, and then yeah, fast forward, now I'm here.
It's a
Um,
very interesting transition.
yeah, totally. I think I realized for me at least like that politics is not really where I wanted to be and not where I could have the most impact and like what would align most with like my just like my skills. I've always been a very mathy person. So then when I pivoted over to statistics and then learned about FBU and had a obviously positive experience there, which I'm sure we'll get into, then yeah, I ended up pivoting over a few times. So definitely not a problem if you change your career path multiple times along your journey.
So I think that's a good message for the audience. If they're not already that much into coding or computer science, they can still always do better and join Facebook if they just work hard towards their passion.
Exactly. I hadn't practiced any of that stuff. I didn't know really like how to code in any language other than like very basic stuff in Java because I just didn't that was never exposed to me. I'd never even considered that. And I think that that is the case for a lot of people. Like if you sometimes you feel like you're getting started late and
Yeah.
like you're way behind and then like you're put at a disadvantage. But that's not always the case. Sometimes like you can either catch up or find these unique opportunities like FBU that help you kickstart your journey.
Nice. So coming on to the next question, um, what is the social aspect like as a Facebook intern and as a new hire?
Interns have it so good. I miss being an intern. And that's not to say that being a full-time employee is bad. We also have a like very great setup. But being an intern specifically, it's like you're living the dream because you do really cool work and you're on a team and you do have expectations of yourself and of those around you. But then you have tons of really cool like events that they put on for you. There are like thousands of interns and for me, I'm from Florida, so I got picked up and sent to California, and then I'm in a space where I don't know, but there are lots of people who feel the same way as me. And so like getting to know a bunch of people I'm still friends with now, like 3 and 4 years later, that was awesome. And then as a full-time employee, I think that you still definitely have that social aspect. That's like the number one thing that I miss now that we're working remotely is like hanging out and talking to coworkers in person. Like I think that you're just so much more effective and you have a lot more fun and it's like more social. You get to like laugh and just like walk around and eat good food. And I think that you're constantly surrounded by those on your team. And that's the number one thing I definitely miss right now. And I think we're really lucky about that, having that like open culture specifically at Facebook for all employees.
Nice. So thank you for answering that. And so you've been in a couple of roles in Facebook from FBU, SWE, and full time. I'm sure the preparation and interview must have differed based on the levels and everything. Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, this is a really good question, because I think this is like one of the most common things people will ask. And my take on it is kind of different. Like, I don't think that there is any one thing that like a recruiter or a company is looking for like you to say or for you to have on your resume. They're not looking for one string. I think they're looking for like unique people. I mean, they just want to read a resume and be like, oh, cool, like this person sounds like they'd be a good fit. But there's no one like magic keyword that will make that happen for you. So I think that the best thing you can do is really just like stay true to yourself, like be honest with what you've done, like include all of the different opportunities you've taken, and like try to like definitely like present yourself in a positive manner. And I think like that will set you up for success more so than trying to include as many like really fancy keywords or algorithms in your resume, because oftentimes they're not looking for someone who is like a machine. They're looking for someone who's a person who they can like relate to and chat with and have good conversations with. Because ultimately, even if you are someone like a data scientist or a software engineer who is like very like tech focused, you'll spend a lot of your role and your time communicating to people. So that's like one of the most important things that I would say to like brush up on before you have some of those interviews.
Right. So since they're all also looking at what kind of person you are and everything, and not just a machine or a tech person per se, so would you advise people to include other experiences outside of just coding, like any leadership experience or anything like community involvement in their resumes?
Totally. Yeah, I think that is something that can set you out amongst other people, because especially when you're in like a tech field, let's say that you're like you study software engineering, like a lot of people are going to have an internship, or a lot of people are going to have some sort of like experience at school, but not everyone is going to have like something where they're volunteering for 3 years at some like nonprofit or stuff like that. And so those, I think, are the things that can definitely set you apart in a good way. And you don't have to like do 3 different like code projects with all your friends and go to 6 hackathons across the country. I mean, those are great too. But I think you can also look for something that is in a different field that people aren't always expecting.
Right. So what would you say in terms of preparing for your interviews? Like, did you go hard on just lead coding every other day, or how was your preparation like?
Yeah, I definitely looked up like common interview questions. I was trying to figure out like I didn't get asked any of the ones that I had like studied.
Oh,
But I like really was like trying to I looked on like just any website I could find for like common questions that they were going to ask. But then my interview ended up being, like I was saying, like so much more of a conversation. Like, I mean, even like the more analytical questions that I had, they weren't like very specific, like calculate this number for me. What is this type of distribution? And these like very intense things. It was just like, tell me about what you think about this thing, or like, tell me about like if this thing is happening and like what would you do to grow it? Like, what are some of your ideas? And they were just wanting to know like how I thought, and not so much like how good my math was, which I think I really appreciated, because it wasn't it was more so a conversation and less of like a quiz.
that's very helpful to know. Thank you. So, what is it like to struggle or even fail at a project at Facebook? I say this because a lot of people have the impression that if you're working at Facebook and you need to be perfect and know everything at the tip of your fingers, forward, backwards, every which way. So, do you also fail at? Is it possible to fail at projects over there? And how do you struggle? Like, what is it like?
Yeah, you can totally fail. I think everyone does that. And I think, yeah, you're right that there's like a misconception that when you get to some like level or some company or some like status, that like you just don't do those things anymore. You don't fail anymore. And I think that like defeats the whole purpose. Like, you should be doing things that are not risky, but you should be trying new things that like have less of a chance of success, because like those are the things that sometimes can be even more impactful. So like if it's a 50-50, but if you do get it done, like it's huge. And I think those are the really cool things as well that people don't tend to like think about. But yeah, you can definitely fail. I like have many examples of like from internship to now, where like you work on something, you don't really think about like what it's going to do, but you just think it's really cool. And then you like spend a lot of time on it. Maybe it can be a couple of weeks. And then like once it's finished, you're like, wait, like this did absolutely nothing. Like I didn't change anything. I didn't fix anything. Like I just did this. It was essentially a waste of time. But that's totally okay. And I think like that is expected of people, because if you're not doing that and you're just like waiting for opportunities that are perfectly lined up, then that's just not the kind of employee that people generally want. So you have those conversations with your manager, and you can be very upfront with them, like I have, and that's like the best thing to do. Like I worked on this thing, it didn't really work out. These are the reasons why it didn't work out. Like these are the things that I learned from doing that. Like this is how I can fix the future times that I work on something similar. Like I think you can take something that seems like awful and still spin it into something positive. Like maybe not finding anything interesting is something interesting. Like you thought that something was going to happen and nothing happened, so that's cool too.
So, why did you decide to continue to return to Facebook every summer? Because you interned 3 times or
2 times.
two
Yeah.
times before joining Facebook. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think so. To put it short, I came back because I always had positive experiences. Like, I think the reason why people wouldn't want to like continue a job of any kind is because like something like bad happened, or they weren't respected, or they weren't enjoying it, etc. But like I didn't have any of those um, like problems, and that's very lucky. Not everyone can say the same about the kinds of jobs and companies that they work at. But yeah, I interned. I think it was 2017 was my first time, and then I went back 2018, and then I came back full time 2020. Um, and yeah, I had great experiences. I worked on really cool projects. I had really supportive managers. My team was always a lot of fun to be around. They were always helpful. I had a lot of fun on top of like the work stuff. I was able to like meet a bunch of people, some of them who I'm still roommates with right now. So that's really cool experience as well. So yeah, I had a really positive experience every time that I came back at Facebook. So I honestly didn't really see an option. Like when I was going for a full time, I didn't even apply to other companies. Like I just knew that this is where I was going to stay.
Nice. So, what advice do you have for current students? Whether it be those who are aiming for FBU, those who are aiming for a SWE internship or full-time roles, like in general for everyone?
Yeah, this is another really good question, and I think like it's really hard. But my advice is to just like I think to give yourself some credit. Like some of the biggest struggles that we have, like in the tech world, and just I think like in most companies, is like what they call imposter syndrome, where like you don't feel like you're good enough, or you always think that there are people that will be better than you, and like you just have no chance, etc. Like it's useless. Like why even try? Um, and I think that that is like the worst mentality to get into, because then you just set yourself up to fail. Versus if you can try to have as positive of an outlook as possible. I know it's like harder said than done, um, but like it's no easier said than done. I said that backward. But yeah, like just being like giving yourself credit, trying to like present yourself in the most positive of ways. Like if you can trick your mental into thinking like I deserve this, like I this is a really cool opportunity, like I'm gonna apply, because I think sometimes people don't even apply because they don't think that they have what it takes, or they are good enough or whatever. But if that were the case, then no one would apply, and then like only the like very elite subset of students would get their jobs. And like that's not at all what we want. We want to be able to give these roles to anyone who thinks that they would like to try something like this, anyone who has the ability, anyone who is interested. And so I think like if you're even remotely interested in something, apply to it. Like give yourself the credit. I'm sure that you're qualified. If you feel like you maybe are missing a couple of skills, those are things that you can learn on the job. So if you are able to get something like an internship that you pass through the interviews, I think that that means that you are where you're supposed to be. And so that's my advice definitely for like applicants of any kind.
Mm-hmm. I think we can move on to the live Q&A. But before that, if anyone has any questions for Nick, I think Nick would be free to answer those as well. Anything particularly data science related, we can do a few minutes of that.
Sure. Should I look in the comments, or how do you want to do this? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Work-life balance. This is from Angel. Thanks, Angel. Work-life balance is an interesting question because I think most of like society works on a schedule, but in tech that is a little bit different. You're not on a schedule really like at all. You can control how you want to work, when you want to work, as long as you're hitting whatever team meetings you have that day. If you want to show up, I know people like on my team who will arrive at work at 6:30 in the morning, but then they'll leave by 3 p.m. So they just work a really, really shifted forward schedule. I work like kind of in the middle. I try to do like a 9 or 10 to like 6-ish. But then people have the opposite. Sometimes people will roll in at like noon, but then they'll leave at like 9. So like, you really can pick the journey that you want. In terms of like, I think this question is specifically getting at like, do you feel like you might be overwhelmed or like you're working too much? And like, I think that comes with most jobs. Like you have your up weeks and your down weeks. Sometimes I'm like, wow, this week was really easy. Like I didn't really like, I don't know, struggle or feel like down or anything. And then some weeks you're like, oh my God, this is really hard. Like I just had some really intense meetings. And I think that's natural. I think like if everything felt the same, I would be so bored. So I think it's like a very manageable amount of like stress, I would say.
Nice. So I think we have one question particularly for you.
Sure. Oh, this is interesting. Working from home. So I'll definitely like first say that I'm very privileged, and I think everyone at Facebook is very privileged in that like we all have our jobs, and like we're in a time where like a significant amount of the United States has lost their jobs in this like pandemic, and I think that is awful. So I'm very grateful to still like have a salary. Now, with having said that, like, what is my work from home experience like? It's hard. I mean, like talking with people over camera is hard. It's easy when it's just like me and Sakshi and 2 people. But then when you put like 10 people in a room and you're all trying to meet and you're having some sort of debate, like it's just not going to go well because people are talking over each other. There's a lag. Like it's just hard to be on that same page. So those are definitely some challenges I've come across. And I think the way that you get around them is just with like even more communication than before. Like normally when you're sitting next to someone, you can just be like, hey, like I have this quick question. Let me talk to you for 10 seconds. Now you can't do that. So now it's like I'm chatting people a lot more, or I'm like, hey, do you have like a minute to just jump on a video call with me? That way, like we can just resolve the thing that we would normally have resolved in 10 seconds. And because if you just chill on your own and don't ask the questions, then like you're not being as productive. They might not be being as productive. Right. So like it's easier to just rip the Band-Aid and go for it. Just chat with people and keep up the communication.
Nice. So I think there's one more question.
Core areas that a Facebook data scientist works on. So the cool thing is that we have like people who work on data plugged into pretty much every team. I am specifically what they would call like a product data scientist. So I work on a product team. I'm specifically on feed and stories for Facebook Lite. If you are not familiar with Facebook Lite, it is like a lightweight version of the app that is used in emerging markets like India, Indonesia. It's used in Latin America, etc. And so that, for example, is a product. Like we are trying to build stories, and I am plugged into that team. But then there are also like infrastructure teams who are looking at like data and warehouse capacity and like how usage goes up at certain times, and are we able to support and server usage in the next year? Like what kind of things should we be forecasting? There are data scientists who work there as well. If you look at like human resources and trying to look at like how many employees we need, how many we have, what is our open headcount, like where do we see ourselves in the future, there are data scientists who work there as well. So there's the cool thing is that like when you work in analytics, the same thing as when you work in engineering, you can work on any kind of team. So there's not really one specific area. You can work on like what they call ecosystems, which is like how the whole product interacts with each other, which makes sense because it's an ecosystem. So like there really are like all kinds of roles, and you can pick what you're interested in. There are definitely different skill sets that fit different ones, but yeah, you can pick anything.
Yeah, there's so much more to these roles than what we see on a simple listing. So I think we should encourage everybody to apply because they might find something they're passionate about after joining the teams.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that like when you're applying online, you're just applying for like the role of like data scientist, or sometimes it
Right.
might have like one more little specific keyword, but there are many options. So like when you're chatting with your recruiter, you can ask some of those questions like what roles do you have open that are specific to infrastructure? Let's say that you really like backend stuff, or like what roles do you have that are very specific to like Oculus, like if you like Oculus or something, like you can have those conversations. So even if it doesn't seem like exactly the role you're interested in, I would recommend applying. I definitely apply, and then you can have those future conversations.
Thank you. I picked this question because I feel like you had a very interesting background before joining
Yeah.
SBU. So I'm sure a lot of people are curious about this one.
Yeah. So let's see. Going down memory lane. So before I started an FBU for the internship, my only real like analytical experience was working as like a research assistant in a chemistry lab. I was doing like analytics for them, so I wasn't actually doing the chemistry. Um, but yeah, I was working there, and essentially the project was trying to figure out like using like fish and like different like I mean, I'm not going to get too into it, but like thinking about like fish and like trying to see like what their like diet comprised of and if we could like predict things about them. So like I was using similar skills of like statistics and just like data analysis in general. Um, and yeah, that was like my only opportunity when I was going into this was that I didn't go to a school. I went to school in Florida, and like we are not a very like flashy and techie school for sure. So like I had not really heard of these things. We don't have a data science major. Our statistics major is like 25 people. It's all the same class. So like I was never really exposed to a lot of this stuff. I had heard this cool chemistry thing, so I went for that. And then luckily these things worked out. So I think what I would say is if you are at a school that has some of those opportunities, definitely take advantage of them. If you have like a data science club, if you have like ways that you can meet other people who are like-minded, if you want to start your own kind of projects, like do those things, because I know it's especially tricky when you go somewhere that doesn't have any of those opportunities. And I think if you're there, you could also try to start them yourself, although it is hard. Um, but yeah, that was my like one thing. And then like since we've been talking about non like tech related things,
Mm-hmm.
I like volunteered a lot. I worked as a resident assistant in like the dorms on campus, so like I had a lot of people exposure. I tried to work on like student government and college, so like I had a lot of like people and like community building and like relationship skills. And I think that also helped me out because, as I was saying earlier, like I think that it's a unique experience that people don't always expect.
So I think we'll take one last question.
Sure.
What advice do you have for networking and interacting with employees
Mm.
while interning? I think this is very important.
Yeah, this is an awesome question. So at any company and in any role,
Yeah.
you will be like in some sort of team. And obviously you're going to know your manager. You're probably going to know your manager's manager and maybe the people who like sit around you. But I think when you're at that company in that role, you can take so much more advantage by talking to everyone, like literally everyone that you see. Um, because people know that you're an intern, they will be so much more likely and willing to just chat with you. So I think you can reach out to people like I tried to do. Hey, do you have 10 minutes to like get coffee with me or something? Like, I would like to learn about X. And like, obviously don't waste these people's time. If you haven't even like thought about what they do, then like, don't bother them. But if you like are interested in their role or their team, or maybe they went to the same school as you, or maybe they studied the same thing as you, like those are all just like commonalities that you can come up with and be like, I would love to chat with you about how you studied like biology, but then you ended up being like a user researcher. Like I want to know how that track went because I'm studying psychology and I want to do the same thing or like something like that. So I think like taking advantage of that, people are always willing to chat with you, whether it's like grabbing coffee, eating lunch, walking around in circles. Like I'm sure people will do it. And so like just grab as much time as you can. It doesn't have to be more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but take advantage while you're there.
Yeah. I'm sorry, there are a lot of great questions, so I'm gonna ask you one more.
Yeah, go for it.
And yeah.
did you do a coding assessment for your internship role? So for data science specifically, we don't have to do like the typical software engineering part where you have to like study lead code and you need to like learn how to work these different kinds of algorithms and like different searches and stuff. It's not that intense. They will ask you things that are more specific to your role. So like, for example, if you look at the careers website for data science, like it asks you to be fluent in some sort of coding language, whether it's like R or Python, or maybe things that are not as related, but can still be helpful like Java and stuff. So no, you don't have to be able to like talk about these complex algorithms and like what complexity it is and is it whatever. Like no, you don't have to go that intense, but you will be expected to be able to code in SQL, which is not the same type of coding language, but still very important for the job. So that is something that they will definitely discuss with you. In terms of like statistics, like you will also be asked not complex distributions and like what is this what does the shape of this curve look like? Like that's not relevant. But they will want to know things like basic probability questions and like trying to understand like how multiple variables can interact at once and how you would tackle something. Sometimes they'll give you like a case study, like if you're presented with this kind of problem, like what would you do? And those are the coolest questions because like there's not really one right answer. You can just talk through your thought process. Like, well, I would check this, and then I would investigate this. And so like you can really go into detail there. But yeah, that's my overall answer.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Sure.
I think now we'll move on to Eleanor.
Awesome.
I'm back.
Hello. So
Hi.
thank you, Nick, for joining. I'll put you back again in a bit.
Yeah, Nick, that was so awesome. And I was just kind of in my own room shaking my head at everything you were saying. If you ever get bored of data science, please come join us in recruiting because you just hit every point that I wanted to hit and even brought up some points I hadn't thought about previously. So glad that you could come represent Facebook. So glad we met at that Mexican restaurant in Gainesville, Florida 2 years ago and made a tequila shot together. It served us well.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much, El.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody got a different perspective from our data science role at Facebook because there are so many things you said even I wasn't aware of, even though I'm always researching this and that online. But I'm sure there's so many things I learned today. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
So everyone, we'll be posting the check-in link now in the comments soon. Until then, post your questions for Eleanor and yeah, you can start taking the questions.
Yeah, and I'll preface that check-in link that I think you're going to post, but this is just a resume drop. In no way is this an application. I hope you all do apply, and the way to do that is going to facebook.com/careers/university. And it's really important that you guys make it to that university portal because that is specifically for university students. If you are applying to roles just under the general careers site, you will then be competing with industry level candidates. So if you're applying for a software engineer role, you will be in an applicant pool with people who are coming from Google or startups or whatever. And so it'll be really hard to have your resume seen in that pool. But if you go to the university portal, it is specifically for all of you. And those industry hires, those industry candidates are not considered for those job applications. So just can't stress that enough. Make sure you're looking under the university portal. There's tons of internships, tons of new grad roles. We hire people up to a year out of college. So if you were a 2020 grad, you're still eligible to apply for our new grad positions. But yeah, I mean, we have data science, data engineering, a lot of PhD, UX, UI research roles. There's some really cool niche AR, VR roles. Hardware and mechanical engineering, those will probably fall more under the AR optics type roles. There's product design, program management. Really hard for me to list all of them. And as someone who is not technical, it's hard for me to really tell you guys which role best suits you. So all I can tell you guys to do is go get familiar with our careers page. There's always new roles being posted, and figure out where your interests best align. And also, I guess to get back to that resume drop, Sakshi just put that in the comments. It's Piazza, and I can actually just tell you guys the link. So it's Piazza, piazza.com/check-in/1210. And that will be the unique link for all of you to put in your resumes. But again, it's not an application, but it's a great way for us to see that you all attended this. And, it's a good way to communicate your interest in Facebook, which we love to see. It's really great for you guys to attend these type of events. I always give students that advice is go to events. And I think I graduated in 2016 and pretty much went directly into this role. Although it took me a year, and I can go over my journey into tech because I think that a lot of people can really relate. But I think knowing what I now know, I could go back to college and probably land some awesome jobs. But one of the things is going to these events, although this is maybe outdated, but standing in line at career fairs, it is so worth it to go to career fairs. So as we switch to these virtual models, I don't know what that's technically going to look like yet, but it is worth it. It is worth your time to get that face time with recruiters. And then, of course, attending events like this is great. It may not lead directly to a hire, but all companies are tracking this attendance. We're tracking this interest, and that builds. And I mean, at Facebook, I think one of the most ultimate deciding factors when we are looking for hires is someone who really wants to work at Facebook. We really can hire anyone we want. We have this incredible privilege. And as recruiters, couldn't think of an easier company to recruit for because it is so easy for us to communicate how much we love to work for this company, but also so many people want to work with us, and we love that. But because of that, we really get to be selective with who we want to hire, and what that comes down to is who do we want to work with. So of course, yes, you have to meet that technical bar or that product bar or that communication bar, whatever it is that is relevant to the role you're applying. But more than that, it is who are you? How do you show up every day? I think probably the most common thing that people share at Facebook, what we love best, is just working at Facebook with each other. I just love my coworkers. I loved going into the office every day. As Nick was really explaining, it is I just think it is such an efficient work model where people are working on their own time. I'm someone who gets in at 10 and sometimes I leave at 2 o'clock. If, my workload is light, I never am just sitting at my desk for the sake of sitting at my desk. I have a lot of friends that are in finance and advertising, and I'm trying to hang out with them. They're like, I can't leave until 5 o'clock. I'm like, why? You're done. They're like, I can't leave. I just no longer can really understand the need for that. But what that all leads to is people are only at the office specifically under their own decision and their own want to be there. And even before this virtual work from home model that we are all in, it was still a very virtual company, and people were working from home all the time. I travel for work, but I also travel a ton personally, and I would be working from Argentina sometimes, or our Mexico City office. And so, yeah, all of that just really contributes to this content workplace. People are just content to be there, and some people do reach their expiration at Facebook, but they are now so well equipped to re-enter the job market, and they know they are a competitive candidate now. Once someone is ready to leave Facebook, that happens pretty quickly. They can pretty quickly go get a job at another company. So again, all of this really just leads to people who want to be there, who are happy to be there, who are happy to be working together. So yeah, that's my favorite thing. I just think it's a lovely place to work, and encourage you all to go to our careers website and drop in your application at any time. For a lot of the roles we hire over months. There are a few roles that have a shorter timeline, but in general, we're hiring until March or April every year. So no rush. Don't rush your application. If you don't feel ready, take your time. But yeah, it's a great place to work. And I'm ready for questions. I'm done with my spiel.
Thank you. So the questions are in the comments tab, and you can pick them now.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay, well, maybe I'll just go over a little bit about what we're looking for in resumes. I obviously spend a lot of my time looking at resumes, collecting resumes, meeting with students. But there is no perfect formula. If I could give you guys a perfect formula, I would. We are first and foremost just looking at university. Because we do university recruiting, we just want to make sure that you are in a university. I actually work specifically on the team that is focused on non-big schools. So I am not looking at the Harvard, I'm not looking at the MIT students, I'm looking at the small liberal art colleges, I'm looking at those big state schools, really making sure that no one is overlooked just because they're not at CMU or whatever. So there is not a school bias at all. Like, that is literally what my team does, is to ensure that we are seeing all of your applications. But we, best case, you have previous internship experience in whatever role you're applying for. But I also know, I too was in college. I'm like, how do you get an internship if to get that internship, you need a previous internship? So I get that. My first internship, I knew I wanted to work in tech. I started out in CS, and I got my first internship through a friend of a friend of a friend, whatever. And I used that connection. And once I got that internship on my resume, I then was able to get my other internships at startups because I had that foundational experience. So yeah, use your network if you are able to. Of course, apply. Again, if I had known what I know now, I would have applied to FBU. I would have applied to all of these programs, but I counted myself out before even trying. So definitely apply. Use your network. Use your alumni network. That's a really great resource at your colleges. And if you can't land an internship, that is okay. It is so not the end of the world. But you still want to be productive with your time. I would not want you guys to just leave a gap for what, even this summer. I know it was more than any other time harder to get an internship, and we know that. Don't leave it blank, though. Take this time to create something. Make a project, join, a nonprofit where you can help them with their website, help your dad's lawn mowing business streamline their payroll or whatever. Create your own project, create your own website, work on your own app. It does not need to be a success. It does not need to be shipped out onto the Android platform. What we're looking for is someone who is initiating their own success, someone who is actually dedicated to these technical or non-technical interests of theirs. You can say you want to be a software engineer, but you have to actually display that interest and that dedication to mastering what you are trying to master. So yeah, it's okay if you don't get an internship, but work on a project and put that on your resume. And that's what's great about projects, is anyone can do a project in whatever their field is. Start a startup, join your friend's startup and take over their marketing if you're trying to get into marketing. Build whatever you can build and put that on your resume and talk it up. Of course, be honest, but also use fluffy words. Elaborate on the reach. We're not going to know. And so, yeah, I'm always like, be your biggest fan, talk it up, brag about it. we're looking for some basic classes in whatever role you're applying for. So like for software engineering, we are looking for people who have taken data structures and algorithms. And you can currently be enrolled. So in this fall, if you're applying places and you're currently enrolled in those classes, still put that on your resume, because we need to see that. And then, you know, if you're applying for some mechanical engineering internship, put in whatever relevant classes are on there. We love to see TAs, especially in like data structures or one of those basic engineering classes. Love seeing TA. As Nick had experience with research assistants, great way to spend your summer or a semester. You know, any personal projects, as I was saying, club leadership is wonderful, and even just club participation, love to see that. People ask about GPA. At Facebook, we don't care about GPA at all. I just hired someone who has a 2.89, which I don't even care about, but I know that's a worry of people's, and it is not a worry of ours. So I don't think it always necessarily reflects someone's technical abilities. If you do have a 4.0, put that on there, you know, because sometimes I'll be looking at a resume, it'll be completely blank, or, you know, just a club participation, and then, you know, they work at Starbucks. But then I see a 4.0 and I see a major GPA as a 4.0. I would then be interested in this person. I'm like, you don't have to have all this work experience, but what that 4.0 is showing me is that you are good academically and technically. But also vice versa. You know, if you have this low GPA, but you've been working at a startup for 3 years, I'm like, that's awesome. That work experience right there will outweigh what I may be looking for in a GPA. So it's all, I mean, we approach these things holistically. We're not looking for one thing. And like more than anything, we're looking for you guys to guide us. You tell me what you want me to know about you. You know, I'm excited to see anything. I have hired Japanese majors into our software engineering internship. I've hired people who were just lifeguards and never had previous internship experience, but they built this really cool app. And, you know, we met at a career fair and I got a good sense for their technical proficiency. There's so many ways in. It's really hard to like prescribe this specific way. So yeah, ultimately, you know, show me what you want me to know. Show us what you're excited about, and then we will get excited about that. So that's my resume advice. You know, make sure it's digestible to a non-technical person. A lot of us have a really good understanding of the technical work that we're looking for and what you guys will be working on. But it really does help to make these things easily understood. So if you have some internship at some really cool tech company and you're working on some really cool top secret whatever, summarize that in a way that your parents will understand or your grandmother will understand. I personally send out my resume constantly to everyone to just continually get feedback and get fresh eyes on it. And so also, you know, use your friends and your parents in that way and ask for advice, ask for tips, and take the time to implement them. I know working on resumes is like torturous. At least I personally think that. I hate working on my resume, but it is worth it. It is one of those things that I think is a good use of your time, is to really get a solid resume that you are excited about and you think communicates yourself well. But also don't stress too much, you guys. Like, all of this works out in the end. It can take people years to get into these companies, and perhaps along that path, you realize big tech is not even for me, and I've now found this new passion that I hadn't even known about, and this is the route that I want to go. You know, I love working for Facebook, but I get sad when I see the stress and panic in students' faces. Also because I can empathize. Like I started out college in CS, and I just knew I wanted to work in big tech. I didn't know anything about it, but I was just like, I've seen like whatever society has shown us about these Google campuses, and like, I want that. Like, that just looks so fun. And maybe that's a shallow reason to explore tech, but like, that's what it was for me. So I started out in CS and had never taken CS prior to college. I went to University of Southern California in LA. And on the first day, everyone was like already coding. And I was like, what the heck? Isn't this intro? Like, how are people so proficient in this? So I tried to stick it out for the year, but I just could not find my footing, could not find my community. And so ultimately dropped CS and moved to economics, but knew I still wanted to work in tech, but it was even more muddled because I'm like, well, now that I'm not in comp sci, now that I'm not in this technical degree, how am I going to find my way into a tech company? What does a job look like for me? And so I did startups for my first 2 internships, which I really recommend because a lot of these roles aren't so specific. They're not like mapped out. You don't have this like 12-week roadmap. They kind of bring you in and they're like, we need you to do some competitive analysis, and then we need you to do some business development, and then we need you to make some calls, and then can you go get us coffee? And you're just kind of like, yes, I want to do whatever. And so through those 2 internships, I realized, more than anything, more than any of my other work, I loved working with people. But still, I was like, what does that mean? How do I get into these tech companies? My last internship was at a finance company, which I did not care for at all. And then it took me a full year after graduation to get into Facebook, you guys. I applied 3 times. I somehow interviewed. I don't know why they chose me to interview looking back. I applied for a manager role, which, guys, you can apply for anything. If I applied for a manager role right out of college with no real experience, you guys can too. It was a dreadful interview because I obviously had no managerial experience. But I wanted to work at Facebook so bad. Got rejected immediately, cried for days, and then applied to another role, didn't get that one. And then I went the contract route, which I really recommend to people who are graduating and having a difficult time getting into the companies that they want to or the industry they want to. Look up contract roles. It's a lower barrier to entry. And so I started out at Facebook on contract and then was converted to full-time. So I really do recommend. There's other ways. There's creative ways to get into these companies. Okay, how important are cover letters? Well, at Facebook, we don't do cover letters. That's not something we ask for. So not important here. At other companies, I don't know. I haven't recruited other companies, so I don't know what it's like, what aspect that plays. But for me, at least, when I was in my year of unemployment and applying to every single company ever, I wrote a lot of cover letters. And I do think it is a space to communicate yourself holistically. You can kind of tie together all of these bullet points, fill in some of the gaps. I would say keep it short. Like, I can only imagine what it's like to read 100 cover letters in one day, similar to when I'm reading 100 resumes. I'm looking for concise. I'm looking for consistent. So make sure that everything's grammatically correct. Make sure that the formatting looks good. But yeah, I mean, cover letters are also a pain, and I dread the day that I have to do that again. But I imagine they're important. I would just keep it short, you guys. Like, aim for 2 paragraphs if you can, and spend time on them. Again, ask for feedback, get edits. But yeah, I think they're probably important. If a company's asking for it, then there is some need for it. They're not just asking you to do that for no reason. Oh, great. If you are a freshman recruiting for summer and are taking data structures and algorithms in the fall, but your interview is in the fall, will you be tested on DS topics? Well, so we have specific internships geared towards freshmen and sophomores, which is Facebook University that Nick was a part of. And so those interview processes are different. And we are not technically looking for those basic CS or data science courses because we know you are freshmen. However, really recommend that if you guys are enrolled in those classes, put them on your resume. We want to see that. So yes, those introductory internships, those interview processes are definitely scaled down. It is much more of a conversation. There is no real technical portion to the interview process. There is a technical coding challenge with Facebook University. It does not make it or break it at all. You can fail that coding challenge, and in no way does that mean it's an automatic no. It's just one component of your application. But yes, once you get into the general 12-week internships, it is really crucial you know those data structures and their algorithms. Just like from a theory standpoint. All of our questions are based in algorithms. So it's important that you know that, or else, you know, it might not be a very fun interview. Is it true that experienced recruiters, I mean, yes, I personally do not spend much time on a resume. I don't know if that's a good thing to be sharing out or a bad thing. I don't know. But like, yeah, we don't spend a lot of time. Sometimes we do. Like when I see a resume that is just naturally grabbing my attention, then like, yeah, I definitely start looking through it just because I personally like, whoa, that looks really cool. Or like, wow, this like water conservation program that they're working on just aligns with something I'm interested in. But in general, you know, after a year of recruiting for the same profile, I can know pretty quickly if I'm interested in moving forward with that person. So again, like knowing that, guide the recruiter's experience, knowing that I'm just looking for a few seconds. What do you want to make clear to me? You know, make it bold, make it easy to understand. I do think recruiters probably spend a short amount of time on most resumes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have a follow-up question to that, and I'm sure a lot of people have that too, regarding the number of pages in your resume, because a lot of people have been talking about how they get rejected if the resume is over one page. But would you say that does it matter? Because a lot of times I've also heard that having 2 page sometimes makes you unique as long as the experiences are relevant.
Oh no, go on.
And to the
I can
point.
do both. Oh, okay. I'll answer that.
So, do you think?
Again, this is personal preference, you guys. So what I am saying is not like the rule of thumb at all. And I'm sure a lot of recruiters will be like, wow, this girl does not know what she's talking about. But just personally, I like a one-page resume. I would never automatically reject someone, and I wouldn't just say no. But if you want to be a friend to your recruiter, keep it concise. And I know it can be really hard to get all of your experience onto one page, but that's actually a really good practice for you guys to go through and really prioritize what is most important. Something that I did is I had a running Google Doc of all of my different experiences, and then I would copy and paste into a new resume that was really custom to whatever job I was applying for. So if you do feel like you have a ton of experience and it's kind of all over the place, you know, write it all down, have it all ready to go, and then copy and paste it into the resume that you are making for that job. But I do really recommend keeping it to one page. Of course, that's different for other roles. Like PhD usually has more than one page if it's a more research-focused role. But for these university level undergrad and master programs, I'd really recommend one page if possible. But you know, if you can't get it down, that's okay. I do really though recommend one page. As a recruiter, what do you look for exactly when you ask, tell me about yourself? There seems to be a variety of information online. I mean, again, you guys, like whatever you want to tell me, we're not looking for like this exact perfect sentence. I am wanting to hear what you want to tell me. The more passionate you are, the more unique this is. You know, if it's something I haven't heard, like that's awesome. What really comes across is someone who's really excited to be on this phone call, to be sharing their enthusiasm for Facebook and their enthusiasm for software engineering, and they know that tech can change the world and they want to have a place there. And you know, I don't mean to put it back onto you guys, but I'm putting it back on you guys. Like, you guys know what is best. You know what you want to tell the recruiters. Just bring your personality to the phone call. You know, don't try to be like mastering this phone call by figuring out what I want to be hearing. Take control and tell me what you want to be telling me. So yeah, I mean, and just have fun. Like, I'm having fun on these calls, and I really hope that my candidates are able to relax. And I just want to get to know you guys and want to hear what you want to tell me. Do you have some tips for making connections on LinkedIn? Ooh, what's the best connection message you've seen? I'm really bad to ask about LinkedIn because I avoid it. I'm sure some people on this call have tried to get in touch with me over LinkedIn, and to be honest, I ignore most messages, and I apologize. I just don't have time. I would love to connect with everyone if I had the resources to. But I do look at some messages sometimes, and it is the ones that are personal and who want to tell me the story of this tech that they are building. No need to tell me your whole personal life journey, although I am someone who one day will love to hear that. But to get my attention, just tell me about that project that you just built that you're super excited for, and that those skills are perfectly aligned to the role that you're interested in. Like, just go in with the punchline, keep it relevant to the role, keep it short, and of course, utilize mutual connections. When I was applying to jobs, if I saw someone with a connection, I would text them and say, hey, are you actually friends with this girl, Sarah, who's a recruiter at whatever company? Like, would you actually connect me? So use that. But I don't know, LinkedIn's hard. And I apologize if anyone has tried to get in touch with me and I've ignored it, but it is not my strong suit at all. But one day it will land. If you send 500 messages on LinkedIn, someone is going to open that message and want to help you out. So stick with it. Ooh. Honestly, I don't think I can answer this question just because I do not recruit for that profile. But in general, though, you guys, you can apply for things that you don't meet that minimum 2+ years. It may be harder, it may be a higher mountain to climb, but it's not impossible. And like, it doesn't hurt to apply to jobs, you guys. Like, don't count yourself out before even trying. So if you feel confident that that 1 year is really strong and really relevant, then apply. But yes, best case is you do have 2 years and you are matching those minimum qualifications that we have listed. Breaking into PM. PM, I also don't recruit for PM, but I know we are looking for previous project management experience. But the great thing about that is you can gain project management experience in like any situation. You don't have to have been a previous PM at Microsoft to get into our TPM program at Facebook. In fact, it's so cool when we see people who are doing PM roles that we hadn't thought of. Like, you're being the PM for the coffee shop that you started out as a barista and now you've worked your way up and you're managing all of these different things. Like, that's so cool. That's what's cool about PM is you can get really creative. And, again, don't try to like prescribe to this exact PM, whatever. Like, go seek out this experience in whatever creative niche is available to you and put that on your resume. But it's great to have that CS foundation too, because we are looking for a bit of a technical foundation. So I think you're probably in a good spot. Club experience and a work experience. If you are like running the website and you have built up this entire technical flow and whatever, like it's actually experience to work and it could feel like an internship, totally. If it's just you're a club participant, I would just put that under extracurriculars or leadership experience. But yeah, if you feel confident that like, no, this felt like a job, like I really produced X, like, then yeah, put that under work experience. Oh, so many, you guys, and we only have 1 minute. But making my hires and getting to meet them. I mean, I've gotten to hire some really amazing people. One of my favorites is someone who reached out to me over LinkedIn, actually. Was going to this small school in Ohio and is visually impaired and told me about how he built this Google Maps for the visually impaired on his college campus. And he immigrated from Turkey. He was completely alone, and Facebook is how he stayed in touch with his family, and it was accessible to a visually impaired person. And totally put him through the process, and he killed all of his interviews, and he just celebrated his 1 year at Facebook, and we still stay in touch. And his family sent me Turkish delight all the way from Turkey, as if I was the one to thank, but really their son did all the hard work. So that was an amazing hire, and I have so many more stories like that. But also just like making friends with people like Nick, like that's super fulfilling to me. Like, he's awesome and is someone I got to meet on my job. And yeah, there's so many fulfilling moments. And I know we're at time, so I don't know how you want to wrap this up.
Sure. So I think we ran out of time and there's been a ton of questions, but thank you so much everyone for attending, and thank you to Nick and Eleanor for taking out your time for this information session. And to everyone who didn't get their questions answered, I'm so sorry. We'll try and host some more events like this where we are going to answer some more questions. Stay tuned for our events lined up this weekend, next weekend, with lots of other companies as well. The link is in the comment section. And a special thank you to Eleanor, who got me linked to Nick. And I've heard a lot about you. So
Well, it's our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this was amazing. And I want to use actually and thank everyone who joined and asked questions. I really appreciate like an engaged crowd. So this has been awesome.
Yeah, great job, you guys. Stick with it. It all works out. Like, if I made it to Facebook, you guys can too. It's going to take tears. It's going to take rejection, but it will be worth it.
Exactly.
thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.